Are you still enjoying magic tricks? Very well. Good evening. I hope that you are having a lovely dinner. And even more so, I hope that you've had enough drinks to be ready for the Q&A session with Bart. We will start with 20-25 minutes presentation. Then we will move to the juicy part of asking questions. And I count on you, as per Bart, that you will not withhold questions. We go nasty. I will help with this, obviously. Let me introduce Bart Derde. You know, he's quite an iconic guy for supply chain leader, because not only did he have 30 plus years of proper corporate career going through Unilever, going through Reckitt, going through GSK, and in the end, detaching Haleon from GSK and making it into something meaningful. But also, throughout all of these years that you can imagine, involved a lot of difficult moments and a lot of tough calls, he remained very human. And this was my first impression when we met for the first time, that actually I'm speaking to this guy for the first time, and I feel like I've known him my whole life. And since then, we are in touch, and that's why I'm here today to ask him half of those nasty questions. So, Bart, without much further ado, let's move to your session.
All righty.
There you go.
Thank you very much. What an intro. Much appreciated. You know, it's a time of executive orders, have you noticed? And the good news is Maciek and Leon got their black pen out. And they've signed an executive order today for everybody who's attending this conference. And the executive order is, every single one of you is now the chief executive officer of a company that you want to run, a passion that you have, something that you want to do with your life to create the future and make the future a brighter place for you and your family. How does that make you feel? Sorry? Yeah, scared? Any others? Empowered. Love it. Empowered. Inspired. These are the words: scared, empowered, inspired. Now, what I wanted to talk to you today is about my learning of 35 years in the wonderful organizations that I've had the pleasure to be in. And some learnings I've taken from that, and the learnings that hopefully will help you feel like what you are doing today. You go back to work on Friday, and you feel how you would feel if it was your business. Because it is your business. What you do every day in the organization that you're part of, it is your business to be involved in everything that you're part of, and it is your business to make that business better, and to feel like you are the CEO of that company. And if there's one thing that I've learned in an organization, and in all the places I've worked in, it's feel like it's your business, because otherwise it's not worth it. And so that's the learning, the fundamental learning I've had over the time that I've been around. And Maciek has kindly introduced me. I've been part of a few organizations. At Unilever, I learned plan, source, make, deliver. A brilliant company to learn what I think supply chains are about. Reckitt, I learned what it took to be an industry, basically a company that went from 3 billion to 12 billion pounds, a pretty tough organization. The first thing, the chief supply chain officer at Reckitt came into my office and he said, you know what, the price of a pallet has just gone up by 10%. I said, how do you know what the bloody hell the price of a pallet is? You're the chief supply chain officer. And the point is, that company was focused on business outcomes, and I learned how to be a business leader at Reckitt. At GSK, I learned how to separate and spin out the biggest spin out in a decade. That's us, the leadership team at the FTSE. We created Haleon, which was the GSK, Novartis, and Pfizer consumer health businesses, separating from their mothership and becoming a separate, independently listed companies and doing that on the FTSE, which was an amazing experience and something I will cherish forever. I was born in Belgium. I got two kids who are amazing. They're both science graduates, actually, but they've not got into science, but there you go. and I was born in Belgium, and I now have started my own business, and I've learned adapting in life, and what it takes to adapt to new ways of working is probably the biggest single thing that I've found valuable to me. I do investing. I invest in small businesses. I invest in bigger businesses, and I've been pretty successful at it already in a year and a half. I consult with private equity, who in my view are much longer term thinkers than many of the corporations that I've worked in, because whilst they look for an exit, they actually look for an exit in 7-8 years' time, and they don't worry so much about every quarter in between. And so that is an incredibly liberating experience to work with private equity. I was involved with CD&R, who just created the Appella business from the Zanofi spin-out, and a number of others. And I do educating. I work with the London Business School and with Corn Ferry to create a program to help supply chain leaders become executive leaders. And that's where my story starts. Learning number one. And there will be a test at the end, and there are 10 of them. And the one who gets the most right gets a bottle of champagne. So look, I've been in supply chain all my life. I've loved it. But what I learned when I went to the executive team at Haleon, the first thing I learned was my role was absolutely nothing to do with being the supply chain head. Because I had an incredible team who knew how to run a supply chain. What my role was actually about was helping peers connect and being an enterprise leader and running the enterprise and being part of a management team that was delivering for all the shareholders, all the stakeholders involved in running an enterprise. And what I think supply chain leaders, in my view, are the best people to be enterprise leaders, and yet are only 10% of CEOs, I think it is, 12% of CEOs come from supply chain backgrounds. And I think it's because we don't see ourselves as enterprise leaders. We see ourselves as functional leaders. And so my encouragement to you today is to think about what it would take to genuinely be an enterprise leader in what you're doing and what you want to do. And that means seeing the world through the eyes of what it takes to win as an enterprise, not as a function. And so we get told as supply chain leaders, these are the things we get measured on usually. These are the kind of things that I think we're all, do you recognize that list of stuff? Stuff that you worry about every day, stuff that matters to you, stuff that people generally measure you on. And when you go to a management meeting, I think we tend to talk and start with this kind of conversation. How can I reduce inventory? How can I improve service? How can I do all of these kind of things, which are things that we start the conversation with. And my challenge to you is how do you orientate, and this is what I've learned, how do you orientate the conversation? Doesn't mean that how do you orientate the conversation differently around the things that people really care about when they're running a business? And how do you think about orientating the conversation you have around these types of conversations? So how do I grow the business through driving on-shelf availability, through doing speed to market, through making a difference to the consumer and the customer that I am serving? And for that reason, maybe I need a new IBP system, maybe I need a new planning system, but it's to serve the customer, it's to drive growth, it's to deliver value, it's to deliver EBITDA, it's to make the world a better place through a sustainability agenda, it's to drive cash for value. If cash is valuable in inventory, then it's valuable in inventory. But how do you use your cash to deliver value versus how do I reduce inventory for the sake of reducing inventory? So how do I make sure that as supply chain leader, I usually run 50% of the organization. 50% of the organization is in my responsibility. How do I use that to drive the agenda of how we think about the people agenda for the organization? How do I make sure the people agenda embraces that 50% of people as a corporate and a corporation? How do I make sure that I am at the lead, at the forefront of that conversation? So enterprise leadership is absolutely the way I think supply chain leaders need to lead and how supply chain leaders can absolutely lead. And I put this into a bit of numbers. This is, sorry, it's late. You've all had a beer, and I'm giving you a bunch of numbers. But I'm going to really test you on these numbers, because in a minute I'm going to ask you the value creation story for supply chain. And look, there's Company A, right? Company A is growing at 4% a year. 2025, it's got 10 billion revenue. It's got an EBITDA of 1.5 billion. It's doing pretty well. It's growing at 4%. It's got a PE multiple of 15. By 2030, it's held its gross margin at 60%. It's grown at 4% a year. And the valuation, assuming no inflation, because this isn't an inflationary story, is pretty much double what it was before. Not bad. Not bad. The good news is then, each and every one of you come along and run Company A. You're now the Chief Executive Officer of Company A. And you're going to do two things, only two things, that will create enormous value for this company. First one is, you are going to grow the business at 5% a year instead of 4% a year. Do you think supply chain has a role to play in growing at 5% a year instead of 4% a year? Better on-shelf availability, better speed to market, focus on consumers and customers, focus on bringing value to consumers and customers through driving net revenue. So fantastic. The supply chain's just delivered 1% more growth. At the same time, the supply chain's also moved the gross margin from 60 to 63%. Pretty doable. 3 points in gross margin over 5 years. Fantastic. The good news is, at that point, your PE ratio goes up to 18, a multiple of 18 instead of 15. Because the city is valuing you as better than the average. So we've created some value. Any guesses on how much value the supply chain has created? Anyone throw out a number? What the new valuation of this company is? So it was 22 billion. In that scenario, it's 42 billion. In the scenario where the supply chain has come along, said, I'm going to change this. Any numbers? 65. Go on. 80. 60. Very good. You're all good at maths. 63 billion. The point is, half the value creation of this company is through the supply chain story. And I don't think we tell that story enough. And it is true for so many organizations. And if you look at Procter & Gamble and you look at many of the big organizations, they've gone back over time and looked at shareholder value and looked at total net shareholder return, and they've realized that many of the kind of catalysts for change and the driver of value creation really comes from supply chain. And I think, therefore, we are owed a seat at the table, a seat at the business table that drives the business. And driving the business is what we need to be a part of and what we are a part of. And that's what I think I really would say is learning number one, enterprise leadership. Be enterprise leaders and take the role of being an enterprise leader. Learning number two, this is a recent learning. I've been involved with small businesses now for a year and a half. I've invested in 10 of them. And there is so much you can learn from small business versus corporate. And it is just baffling to me that I spent 35 years thinking that all I could do was teach small businesses how corporate do things. And so, what have I learned? I mean, two companies that I've invested in. One is GMP Manufacturing. They make E45 cream. They make OTC cream. The guy there bought an old factory from 7 Seas, turned it around, and built an OTC manufacturing site. Absolutely incredible. And true entrepreneurship at work. And then a guy who's developed prosthetic limb in Ampora, small, very small company worth £2 million. When you get fitted with a prosthetic limb, you have to go to hospital 4 times to get it fitted properly. In Gaza, that isn't possible. So they've now fitted 90,000 prosthetic limbs to people in Gaza by fitting them on site, in the situ without having to go to hospital. And that's quite an incredible feat of engineering, also an incredibly responsible thing to do for the community in Gaza. So really proud to be involved with these two organizations. But you know, the one thing they don't worry about is internal reorganization. The one thing they don't worry about is all the corporate bullshit. The one thing they don't worry about is all the politics. What they worry about is the customer and what the customer wants. What they worry about is cash, because if you don't have cash, you're dead tomorrow. And GMP Manufacturing 9 months ago, had no cash, was about to go bust. And we made some investments, and now it's thriving. But the kind of the cash thing is not, it's not a number on a page. It's oh my God, we're going to go bust if we don't get some money. And how do we get the money? So learning that cash and what cash really means for an organization, I think small businesses really get. And I think we can bring that to life in big corporates. People unlock success. It's only, I mean, when there's 80 of you, if there's one less, that's a big part of the organization that is going to hemorrhage its capability. So every single person matters. And I think that is true for every organization. Every person, every individual wants to make a difference. How can we make that true for everybody? How can we make that true for everybody? Resilience and risk-taking is another level. And how you take risk in a small business is at another level. So they're the things I think that can be very true for corporates and make a real difference. Learning number 3, curiosity. If you go to Spencer Stewart, you go to Korn Ferry, you go to any of these big search companies, they will say one of the biggest leadership traits that makes a difference in leaders is their ability to be curious. Curious about learning, curious about new things, curious about their own leadership, curious about how they come across to others, curious about the world, and realizing that the more you learn about the world, the more you don't know about the world. And I think that curiosity and that sense of curiosity, my father inspired me actually on this. He went to do a psychology degree when he was 67 and learned Spanish when he was 73. And, the point is life is about curiosity because that's what enriches, I think, life. And so again, I think curiosity, learning number 3. Scarcity, this one you will have heard before, I'm sure, the mother of invention. My boss, Rakesh Kapoor, used to say this a lot. He was the ex-Reckitt CEO. We often say we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough people, we don't have the capability, there's just not enough, we need more money to do X, we need more money to do Y. I picked 2 examples, which are quite early on in my career, that were small things that made a difference to the big things. And so to me, being able to do something with nothing is really powerful. I was in Spain in 2006. I was running a couple of plants out in Iberia. Who's from Spain here? Anybody from Spain? Brilliant. Right, in Spain, what's it like in August? Hot. What do people do in August? Huh? They go on holiday generally, right? Spain goes on holiday. So my factory in Spain also went on holiday in August for 3-4 weeks. And we were making laundry detergent, and we didn't have anywhere to put the laundry detergent because we had to build so much inventory beforehand, and it was these bulk boxes. They're still in Spain. You still have the big boxes of laundry detergent, right? We're not yet into the... So big boxes of laundry detergent full of soda ash. Before the summer season, we had to fill a warehouse full of them. We didn't have a warehouse full of them. So we went to the unions and said, guys, how do we solve for this? How do we solve together for this? How do we make this a win-win solution for all of us? And actually, we ended up changing the structure of the holiday season. People benefited from being able to go on holiday when they wanted, but they worked in August. And so we found a way of making sure that we smooth out the supply. It was 26 people in the union every single week for 18 months. And 26 people in the unions in Spain is not unusual. It's just the way it works. A little thing that then became something that scaled across the organization and became something that no other factory could run anything other than through the summer. And so it became a scalable solution across the organization post having done it at a small scale in an organization at local level. I also implemented the pasta sauce line. It was the first line of its kind. It's one of the first things I did. It was a 2 million investment. We got it to 70% OEE within 3 months of startup by pulling 10 people, operators, from the line for 3 months beforehand to engage in how to bring the line to life. Small thing. These things I still remember. These things are things that make a difference to how an organization is successful. It didn't require a lot of money. It didn't require a lot of resource, but it did require a lot of energy and effort and engagement. And so, again, I say, look for scarcity as an opportunity to do something really creative. And creativity is, I think, the answer to the problem, not more resources, because generally big corporates have too many resources, don't use them well, and that's a learning from small companies. Slightly painful experiences. How many times do you feel like you were about to get fired? A few? I certainly have been. And, there is no person who's done something who hasn't fallen on their arse and made a mess of it and got it wrong. If you've done something significant in your life, I guarantee you failed, and I am no exception to that. I have failed on many occasions. And the learning is, it's part of life. And, I'll tell you these two experiences. Nurofen for Children, we bought it as Reckitt. Reckitt went through a brilliant acquisition phase where we bought all kinds of healthcare products across the world. We were flying around the world buying stuff. It was an incredible experience. We bought Nurofen for Children from Boots. It was a $2 billion acquisition at the time. Everybody said we overpaid. So we had to go for massive savings. So we moved Nurofen for Children from Boots to Hull and, of course, messed it up. And there was flocculation in Nurofen for Children, which is when the ibuprofen gets to the top of the bottle and isn't dispersed equally. And we'd sent this product to about 50 markets around the world. So we had to do a global recall of Nurofen for Children. It wasn't the best moment of my career. Mucinex, we moved it from the US factory to Nottingham. We were late. We lost about £50 million of revenue as a result of being late. So my boss came along and said, right, I need a bit of a review with you, Bart. This isn't quite working out. He said, let's meet up in Nottingham and we'll have the conversation about what we can do differently. And we laid it all on the table and said, this is where we are. This is why it's happened. This is what's happened. And, at that point, he was incredibly appreciative of the transparency, the realities of what was happening and why they were happening, and the bullishness and boldness of the way we'd address these points. So, transparency, being open, and facing into the things that have gone wrong, to me, was a massive learning, and he was brilliant. Be clear about your why and regularly relook at it. Does anybody have a simple articulation of, why you do what you do in a couple of words or a simple phrase?
My family.
Love it. Brilliant. Anybody else? Pardon? Salary? Okay. Pardon? Okay, yeah, very cool. To find your purpose, I love it. Yeah, that's good enough. Any others? Yeah, over there. Sorry, speak up a little, I can't hear you.
I like to help people make their jobs more efficient and effective.
Right, love it. Make people jobs more effective and efficient. Brilliant. Love it. Pardon? Curiosity and perfection. Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Mine was inspire outperformance. And, but it hasn't been that for a long time. But what I found really helpful was to work out whether my purpose, whether I was able to deliver on what was important to me in the job that I was in and in the company that I was in, and whether I could connect what I thought was important, my family, my salary, my being able to help others, whether in my job I was able to connect that individual purpose with what the company was trying to achieve. And if I could find that connection, that is where I think there's a power and a kind of beauty about being at work and doing, and we all go to work for 2/3 of our lives, and we want to make a difference. We all want to be there to make a difference. And so finding a purpose, being clear about it, being articulate about it, being able to describe it to others so that you can refine it in a way that it makes sense for you, in my view, is a key to unlocking. And purpose is a big corporate word, but in the end, it's what the hell, why do you get up in the morning? Why do you do what you do? Really important learning. Something I didn't do for the first 20 years of my career. I started to work it out and realized it was actually really important to kind of help make me and help me fulfill what was important in my life. Learning number 7. Choose how you want to lead, but also choose how you want to be perceived as how you want to lead. I was at Unilever for 15 years, very cozy culture. Everybody was really nice to each other, very paternalistic. Went to Reckitt, and who's here from Reckitt? Quite a few of you. Anyway, in 2004, Reckitt was a pretty tough place. I got there, I was a week into Reckitt. I was with my boss and his team, and one of my colleagues, Dimitrios. Everybody knows Dimitrios at Reckitt. He's a famous guy. He said, "Who the hell do you think you are?" There were a few F's in the middle, but I won't do that because it's a polite conversation tonight. Who the hell do you think you are? You come from Unilever. You know absolutely bugger all about what we're doing here. Piss off back there, and thank you very much. I don't need your input. And this was a pretty serious... I mean, I didn't know the guy from Adam, and he did this in front of my boss, and I thought, well, this is a bit different. And I became, to cope with that environment, I became a bit of a similar leader to that. I started being aggressive, tough, a bit arsey with people. And then I went out with my team. We went away for a weekend, actually. We played football with the kids, and we had the family round, and it was all a load of fun. And they said, "Look, you know, this is what we think of you. You're a bit like that." And so I got some feedback on my leadership and realized that I was not the leader I wanted to be and the leader I wanted to be perceived as being. So get feedback on, mainly from peers, but also from your team, on how you're behaving and how you're perceived and how you think you're leading versus how you're perceived as leading. And I was in a command and control for a while, but I can tell you it's just much better being an inspirational leader and being an empowering leader. It's just much more fun. And it is something I've learned. Haven't done it perfectly, got it wrong several times, but I would always encourage inspirational empowerment because it unlocks so much potential and so much freedom for people to operate. And if you can get that right, that is the most incredible, liberating way to lead. Learning number, what am I on? Learning number 8. Right, take control. If your life isn't where you want it to be, do something about it. It is very simple. The grass isn't greener anywhere. I've worked in lots of organizations. I'm doing my own thing. It's just a different color. And that's beautiful because life is about a colorful experience. You know, if you go through life and live a colorful experience, that's pretty cool. But point is, take control. Always act. Always take control. Do something about whatever you're doing and create the future. The future is there to be created. If you're wanting to be an enterprise leader, you think there's something in your organization that can change or needs to change, or you want to change it, go change it. Go find out who's going to change it with you, because no single person can change anything. Get yourself a group of people together, go change it. And don't give up until you do. And that's taking control, and that's creating the future. And do it with people externally, internally. You've got a network here of people. You've got Leon with his black pen. He can sign an executive order. There's all kinds of shit you can do. But there is plenty you can do. And it's only will, the will and purpose that will get you there. So take control. I've started my own business. I've connected with hundreds of people when I started my own business. And the people I connected with are people that I knew. And I've invested in companies of people that I know. And I've invested in businesses, and I've been part of private equity companies with people that I know. Cherish your network, look after it, leverage this forum to get to know new people. Because every time I meet somebody new, I learn something new. And I never did this. I was always very focused on my organization, the one I was in, and making that happen and making things happen in that organization. But this is something, especially with LinkedIn and all the other social media that's around now, it is so easy to do, but so few of us actually make an effort to really cherish it. And even Claire's an inspiration on this, but that, putting a little map out of people that you know, working out how you can help them and how they can help you, that's an incredibly powerful thing to do and something that really is meaningful. And then lastly, number 10, it isn't an accident. Whatever success is for you, it's not about enriching, it's not about having a senior role, it's about what you want it to be, but it is no accident. And I love that quote. It is hard work, it is perseverance, it is learning, it is studying, it is sacrifice, and most of all, love what you're doing, but also, learning to do. Because learning and loving what you do are the two things that are going to make the biggest difference. But it is, I found it incredibly enriching, and, all the kind of ups and downs of life, these are the learnings I've had. That is it. That is what I wanted to share with you. And I hope that's in some way useful to, what your thoughts are. And I'd love to hear in this Q&A, which we're hopefully going to get into, Maciek, in a minute, what you guys think and how you think about making a difference in life, how you think about what your learnings are, and whether there's any questions you've got on this. But I think we'll go into the Q&A. So Maciek, come on up. I think we're going to put some chairs up and we'll have the conversation. Thank you.
Well, I can't help to, not notice.
Huh?
10 Commandments.
10 Commandments.
Guys, I hope that you enjoyed it, and as I promised, we will share this time between me asking follow-up questions, and I do have some, and obviously dedicating time for you. So let me start. I come prepared. This is a glorious career. And by the way, I don't know how lucky, if you know how lucky you are, because Bart, when he ended his corporate career a year and a half ago, this was to have much more time. So obviously, the only slot you can get with him is actually this kind of gala dinner in the evening. Glorious career, multifaceted and colorful, as you said. What is missing from your career, now that you reflect back? What you failed to do?
Well, and that's why I spend time now teaching, and I failed to recognize some of the things on here. If I only knew what I know now. And, I was very functional leader. I remember running a factory. I was a site director when I was 33, I think it was, down in Ashford. And I thought the world revolved around the factory. It was all about the people in the factory. It was all about making stuff. And I didn't realize how much of a world there was outside that single little enterprise that I was responsible for. And so if I'd kind of been an enterprise leader earlier on, I think I would have got to be a CEO. And I am a CEO, but it's of a small little company, maybe, but, not a big corporation. And I would love, as I say, I really, look, supply chain leaders have the most complex jobs in the executive team. I am absolutely sure of that. You've got to inspire organizations. You've got to inspire people. You've got the complexity of the world going upside down and crazy. You've got all the complexity of multi-dimensional KPIs, and KPIs that are absolutely measurable every single day. And most other functions just don't have that kind of scrutiny. And that means people often beat supply chain people up because it's bloody easy. It's like, well, your service isn't where it needs to be. It's easy to measure. It's a bit hard to measure some of the other kind of dynamics of other functions. And so supply chain leaders are, in my view, well set to be CEOs. And I would love to see more supply chain leaders become CEOs of large organizations, because that's, I think, where we should be. That's where we should be.
I'm with you on this one, even if some of my commercial peers
Yeah.
don't actually appreciate when I share with them that their jobs are utterly boring. All right. You talked about value, about treating the enterprise like your enterprise and supply chain leaders or supply chain professionals actually as enterprise professionals and business owners. This is what I had. It is not that easy to convey this message, as we can see by the world around us. Many supply chain, both leaders and managers, etc., fail to do that and end up somewhere in the, towards the end of the value chain, so to speak, or a food chain. So how did you do that to, first of all, yourself, but also probably developing your successors, younger leaders, to teach them? What did you teach them in terms of distinguishing value creation or value extraction from typical things like savings or service or inventory? What did you do?
Yeah. Look, I remember going to the board for my, the board of Haleon for one of my meetings, and the conversation was that we needed 50 million to do an IBP transformation. So I went in and said, we need 50 million to do an IBP transformation, and it kind of, yeah, okay, you can have 50 million to do an IBP transformation, but it didn't come from a starting point of we need to drive growth, and in order to drive growth, we need to be connected with our customers so that we can understand them better and that we can drive 1% more growth in this organization. And by driving 1% more growth in this organization, I need these kind of capabilities. I need an agile supply chain. I need a supply chain that can deliver on that, where GMs and general managers are responsible for the trade-off decisions and where there's an integrated way of thinking about that. And so they're the kind of conversations I wish I really wanted to have. And then I kind of learned and worked out that that's how you talk to a board, and that you talk to them in, boards have little attention. When I go to pitch events, like Dragon's Den, it's brilliant fun. You should, if you're not into it, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it, but you go to what's called EIS schemes and things like that. Anyway, I go to Dragon's Dens. People have to pitch their business proposition in 10 slides and 10 minutes. And that is pitching a proposition to an investor. And I think learning how to tell a story and being able to articulate a story, and if it takes you more than 10 minutes and 10 slides, you haven't done a good enough job of making the story simple and articulate. Go back and do it again. And if you ever get a presentation that's more than 10 slides, send it back and ask for it to be redone. That would be my recommendation to you, because it is simplicity that is harder to achieve than complexity. And that's probably a good learning as well.
All right. Let's try to reduce the number of slides. Listen, guys, this is from me. I come from an organization that is very adept at producing slides. So when I joined...
Send it back.
Actually, when I joined, I encouraged my team to never send me more than 3, because I will not read them.
Brilliant.
We became quite ostracized. Because supply chain presentations were actually 3 sliders. And commercial ones were 130 was the So, you know the drill. Anyway, let's conclude. You mentioned about scarcity, the benefits of scarcity, of looking for new avenues purely because you potentially lack resource. Now, let me ask you a more difficult question, because, operating in scarcity versus operating in abundance, it does take a toll. If you continuously under scarcity mindset, it can drain your energy. Did you see things like this happening to your teams? How did you counter this?
Yeah, of course. I mean, people get fed up that they don't have the resources they need, and there's I think there's two things that I think can solve that. One is, if you don't have enough people, prioritize. And I think you've got to prioritize ruthlessly and be clear with your boss what you are and what you aren't going to do. And I would encourage you always to prioritize first and ask for more money later. And there is a time for more money. Of course there is. But make it small, you need less money. And again, I think the more you can make something small, lean, simple, and then scale it, the more noticeable it is. If you can make a difference to something small in an organization, it becomes noticeable as, wow, that's amazing. And actually, when you're an exec, and I was, the supply chain exec at Haleon, your ability to get anything done is zero. There is nothing I could do on my own. Absolutely nothing. I could only do something meaningful with either the rest of my executive colleagues, or with the board, or with my team. And so, if you do something small with a few people and get together and make something happen, you can change the world. You can change the world. So I would encourage you to do that. Keep it small. If you don't have resources, make it smaller.
Make it smaller. All right. So, can you remember a time that really stuck with you, where you felt that you did some proper magic?
Where I needed what?
Where you did your magic.
Oh.
Give us something juicy. Because I've been so polite to you for the time being.
Did my magic. I don't know that there's any magic, but I guess what I felt proudest of was when I talk to people who have been in organizations I've been in, and they kind of say, we enjoyed working with you. And it was a good time that we had. And that feels really good, that people kind of remember that time as something that was, we got some shit done, and we made a difference. And you know what, if you work with people and you enjoy their company, and that's the other thing I've learned, oh my God, in running my own business, the first thing, I was fortunate enough, anybody heard of Bart Derde? He has. Bart Derde was the god of FMCG, actually, in probably 10, 15 years ago. He was the guy that earned £100 million a year. He headed up Reckitt when it went from £7 a share to £70 a share, and did an incredible job of doing all of that. So he was the god. And I was a minion, really, in Reckitt. And I reached out to him when I left Haleon and said, Bart, do you mind spending a couple of minutes with me? I just want to get your advice on, how I should do this new thing on my own. 3 hours later, he'd given me advice. He's connected me to private equity companies. He's given me some contacts. So the point is, if you enjoy working with people and they respect you, then they'll love you back, and they'll give you something back when you need it from them. And that's been, I've been incredibly appreciative of that. So that's been amazing. Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last one from me, before we move to the broader population.
Yes.
What moves supply chain teams forward? What pulls them back? If you look at all your experiences and you want to get on a really general level.
Yeah, being functional, not business, pulls you back. Pulls you forward is, just thinking consumer and customer, and driving for what they need, and driving externally and thinking about what the consumer and customer needs. And if you always have that in mind, then you'll get it right. And thinking like a small business, doing small things, that'll make you succeed. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Maciek.
Thank you. Let's move to the questions from the room. I'm looking for a first
Can
volunteer.
we turn some lights up, perhaps? If anybody at the back there, turn some lights up in the room.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. Nobody at the back. They've all disappeared. No?
There is a question. Excellent.
Bart, as you mentioned about that giant and you felt like a minion, I'm a small fish in a big ocean where you swam as a shark all the time. So, a question for you. I'm from Haleon. A term you had coined at Haleon, and it is an amazing term called customer obsession. How you balance between customer obsession and investor obsession as a supply chain leader?
Well, the customer pays the shareholder, so I always put the customer first. I don't think it's a very difficult thing to work out. So you always put the customer first, and then they will pay, the shareholder gets paid by the customer in the end. So always do what the customer wants. Simple.
Would you like to follow up with the particular example that you have in mind?
For example, a line of brand where customer needs multiple SKUs. A line of brand where customer requires multiple SKUs, which will require multiple resources, which will require more investment, which will require more logistic activities which will put more money into capex and opex, and we will be having more cost to the project. That will satisfy customer, but at the end of the day, investor won't like it. So balancing those things, that's why before you, there was investor obsession. After you, there is customer obsession. How you balance between those two things and change the mindset?
Yeah. Look, I don't know I don't know what you look. I give the same answer, but look, it's about value. It's about value creation. If you can create value for the consumer, they'll come back. And if you can make sure that the value that you're investing in is a value to shareholders in the long term, then they will also come back for more. And so I don't think it's difficult to see a mutually exclusive situation, to be honest. But yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, I'm kind of... For me? Oh. I'm in the wrong place.
Come closer.
Hey, I want to say a huge thank you, Bart. It was really enlightenment what came through today, and I love the 10 Commandments. I think that's fabulous too. Just indulge me a minute.
Come closer, Claire. Come closer.
I've said thank you for the presentation, but I want to say thank you for something else. You see, age 16 going on 17, I was the worst cook in the world. In fact, what I mostly did the best was burn tea towels in the kitchen, much to mother's absolute fear.
Go on, Claire. You'll get there. There we go. Well done.
Perseverance. Is that in the 10 Commandments?
Yeah, it's
no,
better.
Right. Okay, so when I went away to university, my mother was fearful I would never eat. And now I realise that the bachelor's pasta sauce, of which my mother packed me off with many to make sure I would be nutritiously fed,
Lovely.
is one to say a thank you to you, Bart. So
I also made pot noodle for a while,
oh
so
my
you
gosh,
can be grateful
well, we
for that
probably
too,
all
yeah.
lived on that too, didn't we, anyway? There is a question you asked me earlier this evening, and I'd like to throw it back on you. I think the point that you stepped out of the corporate world and decided to do something different was a real brave move. And you asked me earlier, at a change point in your life, what's the advice you would give back to yourself 18 months ago? And I'd like to ask the same of you.
What's the advice I would give back to myself? Believe in yourself. Believe in, trust it. Bet on you. Bet on you. You've only got bet on you, and double down on the bet, and put all the money on number 36 or whatever the number is, and double down and believe in yourself. Because if you believe in yourself, you can make anything happen. And there are points in time when it doesn't work, but there's points in time when it does. And believe in yourself, because you'll create a future that looks the way you want it to be. And so that's what I would advise myself. Yeah.
It seems that you did. It seems that you did follow this advice.
I think I did, yeah. Believe in yourself. Yeah. Bet on yourself. Double down. Go and get some education. I went to do an AI course in Oxford, and which you did as well, didn't you? Did you do that?
Which one?
AI course.
I did.
Yeah.
At Oxford.
Bet on
That's
yourself,
the one.
Yeah. And I went when I learn curiosity, learning. I went to it's interesting. I had between Haleon and between Reckitt and Haleon, I had to go to 6 months garden leave because they were competing organisations. And so when I did that, I went to the London Business School and did a certificate of management. And that's where I got to know the guys at London Business School, got to know a few of the professors. Next thing I know, 15 years down the line, I'm talking to the professor about creating a program for executive leaders in supply chain. So these things all come round. What goes around comes around. It's amazing how these things networks come together again. Any other questions?
Bart, can I ask a question?
Definitely, this part of the tables were is drastically underrepresented. Go ahead, please.
I don't have a microphone, but I have a loud voice.
You have a great
Yeah,
voice.
do that.
Hey.
Just,
Do you want me to do it first?
just really interested, when you started teaching, did you feel a big gap between theory and knowing all the things you knew from being in business for so long? And did you feel a bit reluctant, or how reluctant were you to share the reality of the corporate world with students?
You know what I found really interesting in teaching is we brought three or four people together. So firstly, professors think really differently, and I can't do what professors do. They bring models, and they bring theory to what we do, which is quite hard to do. You bring a four-dimensional model that brings what you think in practice to life in a very different way. So experiential learning through somebody who's done it, with a professor who's done it. And then, we've got people like Paul Pullman, we've got, Jonathan, we've got Eric Rousier from a private equity company coming to this program, who are people who have been there, done that. So, and then Corn Ferry, who are people who lead and do leadership development. So, to me, education is about bringing breadth of thinking. And of course, I bring the experiential learning, others bring different learnings, and that's what I think is the power of bringing a program together like that, which is very different and kind of creative. But I found it really liberating to have to try and articulate your experiential learning onto a PowerPoint presentation, onto something that can be relevant for people to think about. And so you do have to spend a bit of time thinking about it. The other thing I found is, as you're not in an operational role, you free your mind up to think slightly differently. There is no doubt that in supply chain, because we are in operational roles, your brain capacity is partly taken by running the operational parts of the business. And it means that less of your brain is able to think strategically, enterprise-wise. And that is an advantage that marketeers and others have, because they don't have as much operational stuff to think about. So I would encourage you to be... I didn't think that was true until I stopped, and then I realized that actually my brain capacity is liberated, is the word I would use, to think differently about how I would have done what I did before. So find a way of maybe being less operational, even though you're in a supply chain function, and giving that and delegating that in a way where others can help you with that is a way of liberating your brain to think slightly differently. Yeah.
Bart, so that was an impactful presentation. Really, thank you very much for it. A lot of learnings to take away. I've got a really, really kind of basic question to ask you. What's the most inspirational book on your journey that you've read, and why?
The most inspirational book?
Book, yeah.
Oh, God, now you're asking a really difficult question. I don't know. The Firm.
Go with Harry Potter.
Yeah, no. I don't know. I really like The Firm, which is a book about lawyers, because I wanted to be a lawyer one day. And I almost actually stopped and started getting a law degree, but I decided not to do that. Because I think one thing that lawyers do that to me is exceptionally good is articulate a story in a way that gets a jury to buy into their story. And I like being able to do that. And if I was able to do that as a lawyer,